Hey everyone, Tony D with another screenwriting tip. Today we're going to talk about writing your first act. And I talked about this in a previous video, but I wanted to talk about it again. I got a better phone and I just was thinking about it today. And I don't know if I had all these thoughts in the first video, but we'll see. So how I write my first act is step one. I really have to have my third act in mind. And what I mean by that is you want to know where the script is going, the ending. You don't need to have the entire ending, but just in general, in your head. Like, if it's going to be a movie about a guy who wins a tournament, then you need to know that. If it's going to be about a guy who gets lots of money or gets the girl, you need to sort of know that. I mean, you need to know the kind of movie you're writing from out the gate. You have to sort of make that decision before you put pen to paper, in my view. So, a lot of movies, I think, because of the way movies are pitched, the first act is often too big or too late. So, too big, in my view, is the old Jumanji movie, which I believe the pitch was, jungle animals running through a suburban or city street. And because while that opening is striking and cool and leads people to go, oh, how did all this happen? Your problem is your explanation has to be great, or you have to have a realistic explanation before, the audience starts to form their own opinion. Now, when I see jungle animals running through a city street or suburban street or whatever, my first reaction is, oh, they got out of the zoo. Like the elephant pushed the gate open and all the other animals followed or something. So if you give the audience too much time to think, they start formulating that expectation, and then when you reveal, no, it's a magical game that causes these jungle animals to appear out of the game, then, that may be a bit of a drop-off for them if they have too much time to think. Also, it's about your explanation. I happen to think the original Jumanji, and just the whole Jumanji franchise in general, is not a very good franchise. The idea that a magical game can create jungle animals out of thin air, not a very satisfying explanation for me. I prefer things a little more grounded in reality. So, so you want to kind of, in my view, you want to sort of avoid that. You want to have the ending in mind so you could start your protagonist at his lowest, not his lowest point, but as far away from that win as possible. So there is a journey that you can see. So if the guy's going to be rich at the end, you want him to be poor at the beginning. If the guy's going to get the girl at the end, you want him to be so far away from that girl, it's impossible. For first acts, I'll usually, besides having the ending in mind, I will start to write the first act, then write the second, get to the third, and then go back and retool the first act based on what I know happens. Because then you can drop in those hints and those details that maybe you didn't have when you initially started writing. Remember that writing is rewriting, so you have to expect that you're going to be rewriting something. And you'd have to expect that you would go back and add these details later. So the movie I always like to mention, because I love it, is Predator 2, right? So spoilers ahead. If you were writing Predator 2, the third act is Danny Glover killing the Predator and getting a trophy and escaping the ship as the rest of the Predators leave. Like, the big reveal is there's a whole team of Predators on that ship. It wasn't just the one by himself, but they don't kill Danny. They respect him, they give him a trophy, and they let him leave. And, you have the great line, "Who's next?" which I love. And it's a great win because Danny is an unexpected winner, because he's older and fatter, but because he's such a great warrior, he's a perfect balance, and he manages against all odds to beat the Predator. So when you go back to write the first act, what's the first act of Predator 2? Well, it has all this great detail. First, it's the setting. The setting is realistic. It's Los Angeles in just the future, a few years, and there's lots of crime, and there's a heat wave. These are two elements that are totally native to Los Angeles. There have been heat waves, and they have a huge problem with crime. They've had during that time, they had a huge problem with gang violence. Not so much anymore. I hear more about the homeless problem, but gang violence, yeah, huge, huge problem, especially during that era. So the writers kicked that up. They put Danny Glover in the middle of it, along with a bunch of other characters. They're all cops. They're not special forces like the first movie. So the odds are already kind of stacked against them, because going into this is Predator 2, there's going to be a Predator. And at first, of course, we don't see the Predator. He's just sort of lurking around. People kind of catch glimpses of him, but no one's really sure, except Danny, of course. Danny is the one, I think, he sees him first and knows there's something up. And then it opens with something pretty spectacular, a major shootout with a drug cartel, right? And they have all kinds of machine guns and money, and the cops just have their normal cop stuff. So, although this is a spectacular opening, it is realistic. Number one, it's grounded in reality, and number two, it fits within the Predator milieu, because the Predators are attracted to heat and violence. The first movie, he goes to a jungle where there's a revolution happening. In this movie, he goes to an urban setting. So there's a shootout, and suddenly the shootout ends, and it's because they go in to see what happened, and of course because the Predator killed all the guys. And we see them all hanging upside down. He's removed skulls, and we see the results of the Predator, which is great detail, right? Because they're hanging upside down, that's like a hunter thing, and the cops are formulating their thing. And at the same time, we're kind of not repeating what happened in the first movie. We're sort of reestablishing the Predator, but we're also adding a little more detail. And then they find one of his blades in a like a speaker, and I think they shoot I think one of the guys survives, and they shoot him, or they chase him, I forget. But at some point, Danny leaves to chase the Predator, and the rest of them are doing other stuff, and the movie goes on from there. And it's mostly about Danny chasing the Predator. So that to me is, and the reason I use that example, it's a pretty simple movie, right? It's not super complicated. We don't have, there are characters in it, and they're doing stuff, and they have their own goals, needs, and stuff. But it's mostly straight up movie about two guys kind of hunting each other, right? And it's the hunter becomes the hunted. Danny turns the tables. He's totally outgunned, and yet he keeps surviving. And then he turns the tables on the Predator when he cuts off his arm. The Predator's going to make himself explode because he's horribly wounded, and he's disgraced, and this is the honorable thing to do as a Predator. Danny cuts off his arm using his own blade, and the Predator is forced to stagger away and eventually get caught at the Predator ship at the end. So the detail in the beginning is what lays all the groundwork, right? We get same thing we get in the first movie, which is, what is this? And oh my God, he's hunting human beings, and look at how he's taking the skulls, he's taking trophies, and the little blade is a clue. Like, he's got all these crazy weapons. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? I saw something weird. I saw this weird, like, cloaky guy, and so we get all the details, and we're establishing all the characters. We're establishing Danny and his team, and their various personalities, and what they're going to do to hunt down this Predator. So, and we get the milieu of the era. It's Los Angeles. It's a little a little bit into the future, and crime is kind of out of control, and there's a heat wave. So this is the establishing bit. So at the end of that movie, when Danny is huffing and puffing and he's finally killed the other predator, you know, we have this really excellent payoff with the predators appearing, and like, there's no way Danny could beat more than one predator. He barely beat this guy. But, you know, we have this great sort of turnaround where the predators, well, we're not going to kill you. We honor you, warrior. And they give him, you know, they don't say anything, but you get that sense. And they give him a trophy they took from Earth as honoring him. And we don't really get the fallout afterwards, but it would be nice if we did. It's a shame that the Predator movies haven't built upon that. I would have liked to have seen more of that kind of thing. I pitched a Dark Horse comic, Predator, and my pitch was Predator versus Spartacus. So, yeah, it was going to be a Predator with slightly less technology, you know, and basically Spartacus has to beat him, you know. And I think it would have been a good comic, but what are you going to do? Anyhow, that's how I write the first act, and you should definitely consider your ending when writing the first act. Now, you shouldn't have your ending, you shouldn't have tunnel vision for that ending, but you should definitely kind of write it with that in mind. And it's really, you should have your starting point in mind. And again, you want to be as far away from that ending as possible. You know, Danny was in a shootout in Los Angeles, and at the end of the thing, he's on a spaceship. That's pretty far. Like cop and spaceship kind of don't normally mix. So that's pretty far gone. So you want that distance, so you can say, wow, we've finally gotten to here, you know. And you want to save your revelations for appropriate times within the movie, the second and third acts. So really, we don't want to see the Predator in the first act, and we kind of don't. We kind of catch glimpses of him, and it's really not until the second act that we're actually starting to see him and see his deal and other things. So something to keep in mind when you're writing your first act, screenwriters. I'm Tony D. Please check out my books, Wokistan, a Novel, and The Pineys, and smash like and subscribe if you like this video. Oh, and share it. Why not share it with a friend, a fellow screenwriter?